of the hardest part of leaving someone who hurt you wasn't the loss of them, but the loss of yourself. Trauma bonding is one of the most misunderstood and one of the most devastating forms of psychological entrapment. All relationships that someone has with a narcissist will indeed be a traumatically bonded relationship. Doesn't matter who the narcissist is in your life, if you have a significant relationship with a narcissist, it will be traumatically bonded. Therefore, it's critical for anyone in this position to have a very clear understanding of exactly what a trauma bond is and what it consists of so you can appropriately address it once and for all. Because trauma bonds are what keep strong, intuitive, intelligent people emotionally tethered to someone who breaks them. This is not love, and it's not weakness either. It's a survival response, a chemical, emotional, and psychological hook designed to keep you chasing closure in a relationship that was never built to offer it. And in this video, we are going to unravel the hidden mechanics of the trauma bond, expose the cycle that keeps you stuck, and most importantly, show you how to break free. But first, if you're new to this channel, I'd like to take a moment and welcome you and invite you to please subscribe and be sure and hit that notification bell because I put out new videos every week. Also, if you are interested in private one-on-one narcissistic abuse recovery coaching sessions with me, or if you would like to learn about my new course available now on understanding trauma bonds and how to break them for good, both links are listed in the description below. So today we're talking all about trauma bonds, and we are going to take a deep dive into understanding what they consist of, how it happens, and how to break them for good once and for all. Trauma bonds develop in relationships where there is one person subjecting the other person to intermittent reinforcement cycles, or what we call the cycles of abuse, meaning love bombing cycles and devaluing cycles. So sometimes the narcissist will treat us with love, compassion, respect, and kindness. We call those cycles love bombing. And then at other times, they will treat you with contempt, disrespect, and they may become abusive or withhold love and affection. We call these cycles devaluation or devalue cycles. And around it goes in this relationship from love bombing to devaluation, then more love bombing, and then more devaluation. This inconsistency is what causes a trauma bond to develop. And all narcissists utilize this form of control and abuse. So now let's dive into some of the most confusing and deeply damaging realities a person experiences inside a trauma bond. And we're going to start with what I call the emotional paradox of the abuse. One of the most disorientating truths about trauma bonding is that you're not just emotionally attached to the person who's hurting you, you're entangled with them in a way that feels like both survival and betrayal simultaneously. The very same person who wounds you is also the one who intermittently soothes you. And that kind of inconsistency isn't just confusing, it's neurologically destabilizing. Your nervous system begins to interpret brief moments of kindness as lifelines, teaching you to cling to crumbs of comfort from the same hand that strikes you. You start calling scraps love. You start calling instability passion. You start calling emotional starvation normal. And it's important to understand this isn't weakness, and it's not a lack of intelligence or strength. It's conditioning, a learned survival pattern forged under emotional pressure. And until you recognize this pattern for what it is, a trauma-based attachment, it will continue to masquerade as love, keeping you locked in a cycle that feels impossible to escape. Next, let's talk about an aspect of trauma bonding that most people don't realize because it's not just emotional. Trauma bonds are chemical. They are a form of biological captivity. I often describe them as a kind of chemical imprisonment where your nervous system is held hostage by the very cycle that's hurting you. The push-pull dynamic of abuse creates a biochemical loop. When you're devalued or discarded, your body floods with cortisol, which is the stress hormone. You're in survival mode. Then, when the abuser offers affection again, even just a scrap of attention, your brain releases dopamine, the pleasure chemical. That moment of reconciliation feels euphoric, not because it's real love though, but because your body is starving for relief. And that high-low cycle, it mirrors substance addiction. You're not addicted to them, but you're addicted to the pattern. You become chemically conditioned to equate chaos with connection and volatility with intimacy. Breaking a trauma bond isn't just about convincing your heart to let go. It's about detoxing from the biochemical roller coaster that's been rewiring your nervous system, shaping your cravings, hijacking your thoughts, and distorting your sense of what's safe and familiar. Once you understand that it's not weakness, it's chemistry, you stop blaming yourself, and that's when the real healing begins. Another critical truth about trauma bonds is this: they don't form by accident. They are engineered. Narcissists and other emotional manipulators are not operating on impulse. They're executing a system of control, and they do it through calculated cycles of love and pain. The love bombing at the beginning, that's not genuine affection. It's bait. It's a chemically charged high designed to flood your brain with attachment and euphoria. Then comes the slow unraveling, the devaluation, the gaslighting, the withdrawal. But by then, your nervous system is already hooked. You've felt the intensity of their affection, so when it's taken away, you assume it's something you did. You try harder, you self-correct, you ignore red flags, all in hopes that the original version of them will return. But here's the cruel reality. That return is always conditional, always fleeting, always on their terms, and it's designed that way for maximum control. What feels like chaos is actually a highly effective conditioning system. The unpredictability keeps you chasing, the crumbs keep you starving, and that trauma bond, that's the invisible cage they built around your psyche. Now let's talk about one of the most powerful forces that keeps trauma bonds in place: shame. For many survivors, it's not just fear that holds them hostage. It's the quiet, corrosive belief that the abuse was somehow their fault. Over time, you begin to absorb the abuser's narrative. Maybe I am too emotional. Maybe I do overreact. Maybe if I could just be better, they'd stop hurting me. This internalized blame doesn't just affect your thoughts, it shapes your identity. Shame becomes the leash that keeps you tethered long after the relationship has turned toxic. It silences your intuition, erodes your confidence, and makes you less likely to ask for help. Because shame doesn't tell you you're in danger. It tells you you're the problem. But here's the truth. Trauma bonds are not a reflection of what's wrong with you. They're a reflection of what was done to you. They are evidence that someone strategically exploited your deepest human needs, your capacity for love, your longing for connection, and your fear of abandonment. What you have to understand is that you're not broken, but you were manipulated, and that distinction changes everything. Now comes the moment that shifts everything. You've entered the stage I call the awakening. It's when you stop calling it love and start recognizing it for what it truly was: manipulation wearing the mask of affection. This moment doesn't magically erase the pain, and it doesn't mean you suddenly stop missing them, but something inside you begins to stir. That fog starts to lift, and with that clarity comes a quiet kind of power. Clarity is its own form of freedom. It means you're no longer trapped in the illusion. You're no longer chasing the high, excusing the harm, or blaming yourself for someone else's cruelty. It means you're no longer just surviving, you're waking up. And when that spell begins to break, you start seeing each piece of yourself you had to abandon, and you begin picking them back up. That's what healing looks like. Not some dramatic escape, but a conscious daily act of reclaiming your voice, your intuition, your worth. This is the beginning of the end, because once a survivor sees, you cannot ever unsee this. I am not suggesting that the healing process won't be challenging and be met with difficulties, because it will. However, once you get to this stage, it truly is the beginning of the end. Now you have the information necessary to address what's really going on here, and you are finally on your way to true freedom and reclaiming your life. If any part of this spoke to you, if you saw yourself in these patterns, these cycles, this pain, I want you to know something. The bond may have been built through trauma, but your healing will be built through truth. You are not weak for staying. You were wired to survive. But now it's time to unlearn the lies they taught you about love, safety, and worth, and to remember who you were before the conditioning. You don't have to navigate that unraveling alone. I created my course on trauma bonds and how to break them as a roadmap for exactly this moment in your life, the moment where you're ready to stop surviving the cycle and start breaking it. You'll find the link in the description below. I hope you'll join me on the inside, because you're not just meant to survive, you're meant to reclaim yourself, your life, your happiness, and thrive. Thank you for watching today's video, and for more information on my new course on trauma bonds and how to break them for good, I linked that information in the description below. Have a wonderful weekend, everyone.